After rising to fame as the lead vocalist of White Zombie as well as his solo career, Rob Zombie eventually turned his sights to directing in 2003. And so began one of the most controversial and divisive slate of films with House of a Thousand Corpses. What is up, guys? Welcome to my Firefly Trilogy review series. I have previously reviewed all of the rest of Rob Zombie's films on this channel, and so I figured what better time than October to go ahead and go through the Firefly Trilogy finally and end this weekend on a Rob Zombie ranking. And apologies if my voice sounds nasally at all, I'm a little bit under the weather. House of a Thousand Corpses is a film that I did not watch when it first came out in 2003. I actually saw Devil's Rejects when that was first released. Before I saw House of a Thousand Corpses, was not a fan of Devil's Rejects back in the day, have not been a fan of most of Rob Zombie's films, and so it wasn't until a couple of years ago that out of pure morbid curiosity, I went back and checked out where this guy's career started off. I was curious of what good and bad came along with his very first directing job. I was also curious on where this Firefly saga started off because, for better or worse, these are his most popular and most celebrated set of characters that he has ever created, and I have since seen the film 2 more times. So starting off with the positives for House of a Thousand Corpses, first of all, this might be his most stylish of all of his movies. Now, he was a person that was very heavily involved in all of the music videos of White Zombie and Rob Zombie. He directed most, if not all of them, and so he already knew kind of visually how to direct things. He knew how to make things look cool, which is essentially your main job when you're doing a music video. The music stands on its own, you just gotta make shit look cool in the background. And so this very much feels like a music video director finally trying to do a full-length film. And there's good and bad that comes along with that, but House of a Thousand Corpses, as far as visuals, as far as colors, as far as just what you're seeing on screen, like if you just Google House of a Thousand Corpses artwork, it's his coolest looking movie. The set design all throughout the film, from the gas station, the fried chicken stand of Captain Spaulding, all the way to this pseudo Texas Chainsaw farmhouse, all the way to the point where you descend down into the crypts, the actual House of a Thousand Corpses, where all these mutants and Dr. Satan is hanging out. There's so many cool visual things going on throughout this movie that you never get bored with what you're seeing on screen. There's always something neat, something gnarly, and something that's just unnervingly fun to look at around every single corner of this movie. So it's one where you could almost just put the movie on mute and let it play in the background during like a Halloween party or whatever, and it would be badass, just showing all these different wild things that he came up with, including a lot of the characters of the movie. I love the character designs as well. Captain Spaulding, I think that his clown makeup is just the right amount of simple clown and very sadistic and creepy. Otis is a character that, especially once he puts on that Charlie Manson satanic style makeup, it looks really interesting and stand out as well. Dr. Satan might be the coolest looking and wildest looking character that Rob Zombie's ever created, and like I want a whole story based off of that character just because of how wild it looks whenever you finally get that third act reveal of what Dr. Satan looks like, as well as his like gigantic mutant sidekick and all the little zombie things that are going around. It's not really a surprise that these are his most celebrated and most popular amongst fans as far as his set of characters that he's ever created, because they're just so vivid the way that he fleshes all of them out. There's so many different personalities here, and the way that he gives each of them their own specific design, and some of them even kind of evolve or devolve throughout the movie. It's a really interesting movie to look at, from set design to the transitions to the way that he shot it to all of these wild, sadistic, wacky, white trash characters that he has populated the story with. And speaking specifically on characters, I really do love the character of Captain Spaulding. Now, he's got a very small part in this first film. He kind of just bookends the movie, but he makes an impact.
1. Fuck your mama. 2. Fuck your sister.
There's something about Sid Haig's attitude and the subtlety that he brings to like the trashiness of this character that I really enjoy, even though it's not necessarily like breaking new ground with the dialogue that he gives them. It's very classic Rob Zombie dialogue, which is not exactly a compliment. There's something about the way that Sid Haig delivers that dialogue that it works the best with him than any of the other characters for me.
Most of all, fuck you.
Moving on to the mixed aspects, there is a very grim and ultra sadistic tone to this movie. Now, there's a part of me that really appreciates that, especially back in 2003 when this came out, because we were, going through the late 90s and the early 2000s of horror, especially, where things were much more watered down, a little bit more studio, a little bit more wide appeal, especially after Scream. And this movie was kind of a reminder at the time, like, oh yeah, horror used to be a lot more fucked up than it is right now. And so there's parts of me that can appreciate just how grim this movie is, that all of your protagonists are absolutely fucked. They're going to go through the absolute hell on earth situation that this movie puts them in, and nobody's making it out. And at no point in this movie do you feel any glimmer of hope that any of these characters are going to survive, all the way through to the credits. And so there's something that's very throwback to the 70s especially, which is an element that shows its face in every single Rob Zombie movie, that I appreciate how grim and how dark and how fucked up this movie goes, and how sadistic and mean and relentless the villainous characters are. At the same time, it also makes it a bit of a rough watch, because I'm somebody that I like a little bit of hope sometimes. I like characters where I don't know if they're going to survive, but I'm still rooting for them. I like glimmers of hope given throughout the movie to keep you on the edge of your seat. This movie never really gives you any moments like that to make you question where things might be going in this story. You pretty much know as soon as those scarecrows come off and these characters get drugged and kidnapped and pulled away that, it's going to be nothing but brutality and torture from this moment forth. And so it's not the type of movie that I find myself going to rewatch very often. Now moving on to the negatives, and I'm going to quickly move past this one because it feels like a broken record at this point. I don't enjoy Sherry Moon Zombie's performance as Baby in this film at all. That's not something I'm going to say in a few of the other movies that I had to talk about. There's a couple of moments throughout Rob Zombie's filmography where she actually does pretty decent for as much shit as everybody, including myself, gives her. But this first film, ooh, no. There's this whole thing that she does as Baby, where she has this really goofy, like, almost comical laugh that she gives, like, ha!
Shoo, shoo, said the maiden.
And it's grating on my nerves. I just don't enjoy that. There's just something about the way that she delivers that laugh that every time she does, I'm like, ugh. Cut to something else, please. And at least in this film, her character gets a little bit more time to shine in the other Firefly films. But in this one, I don't find Baby to be a particularly interesting character within the Firefly family. I think every single other person in this family totally overshadows her as far as standing out on screen and doing and saying things that makes them memorable in the film. But the main issue with this movie is that while it is very stylish and very cool and visually interesting to look at, narratively it is disjointed as fuck. I mean, there is no through line whatsoever in House of a Thousand Corpses as far as the script and the plot. It's essentially just, wouldn't this look cool? And then something else. Wouldn't this look cool too? And then something else. Yeah, this would look badass, and just there's no real through line. There's no flow in the story that takes you from A to B to Z in this movie, and it doesn't even really feel like it has much of a story. You don't get hardly any development to the protagonist, which was a deliberate choice by Rob Zombie. He's quoted as telling the studios, nobody gives a fuck about the kids, which I don't necessarily agree with, but nonetheless, he's going for that grim tone here, so that is part of that, is that nobody gives a fuck about them. Let's just see them get tortured. And so you get Captain Spaulding's little horror history ride, and then they're immediately thrown into this psycho Texas Chainsaw pseudo house with all these redneck characters, and then they're tortured and dismembered, and then the one chick that's left gets descended down into the House of a Thousand Corpses with Dr. Satan and all those things. And so it's essentially like an amusement ride. It's like a circus ride where you just go from one set piece and one set of characters to another, and there's not really much of a plot that's actually driving that circus ride. It's just, it's a music video. It's cool visuals followed by cool visuals followed by cool visuals. And I don't even think that even the villainous characters get much of a character development here. I mean, Captain Spaulding, for as cool and as standout as that character is, like I said, he's just kind of sprinkled into this movie. Otis, probably the other biggest character in this family, doesn't get any kind of a backstory or any kind of a explanation or development to who this guy is. It's just, oh look, it's Bill Moseley doing the Bill Moseley thing.
Run, rabbit! Run, rabbit! Run, rabbit! Run!
I've already said my piece on Baby, and it pretty much just goes from there, where all these other characters that we only see for quick little scenes, they're just there. And so, yeah, you didn't focus any time or any effort into the protagonist, but you also didn't back that up anyway by focusing on the antagonists. And finally, what I have realized after rewatching so many of Rob Zombie films, and for the first time watching almost all of them just back to back, I've been binging Rob Zombie for the past 3 days, is that I think he very much is trying to be like the Quentin Tarantino of the 70s horror subgenre. He's trying to have movies that are just bathed in all of his influence, all these movies that he grew up loving, and he's trying to put pieces of all of them in there and cobble them together as this fucked up Frankenstein and become this new thing. And unfortunately, he just does not have the talent level that Quentin Tarantino does. He does not have anywhere near the script writing talent that Quentin Tarantino does. And so when you see Rob Zombie try to do that Tarantino influential Frankenstein type thing to bring this new thing to new audiences and new generations, it just comes across as empty homage. This movie is essentially just a hyper redneck version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's not really bringing anything new to those ideas. He's not really bringing anything interesting. He's not really modernizing it in any way whatsoever. He's just taking that thing that he loves and doing it again with his own script writing, his own characters. And when you don't have well-developed characters, when you don't have an interesting plot driving this new version of that old thing, for me, all it does is remind me of that older thing that is much better. All it does is say, hey, isn't Texas Chainsaw awesome? And I'm going, yeah, it is. I'd rather be watching that. So overall, guys, this is yet another example, even all the way back to his first film, of Rob Zombie having all the potential in the world, all the pieces there to deliver what could have been an absolute classic of the genre, to deliver what could have been a huge standout movie of that generation, of that year, of that era that he brought this film to studios. But it's all held back by all the typical pitfalls of Rob Zombie: poor script writing, poor plotting, and not that great of a collection of characters. And so while there's a big part of me that sees all of the awesome visuals and all of the creativity on display visually in this film, I can never get myself to really love this movie or to want to rewatch it because everything else fails. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please click over here for the rest of my Rob Zombie reviews, and I'm also going to put my top 50 horror films up here for you to check out as well. Like and share this video and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the other 2 reviews of Devil's Rejects and 3 from Hell coming your way this week, and my Rob Zombie ranking this weekend. Thank you as always for watching, and remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.